All right, that sounded really good. So it is 4:30, so I will call this meeting of the Community Resources and Tourism Committee together on Tuesday, January 9th, here in room 54 of the Dunn County Government Center. And we'll do a roll call here, and we are missing Larry Bjork, who informed me that he was out of state, and I think he's at a conference, so he will not be here. Otherwise, the rest of the committee is here, and we have a quorum. Approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any changes? I will, if not, I'll put a motion to. Is there a second?
Second.
Any changes at all? No. If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? None. Passes. Okay, we are going to move on to any public comments. Don't see anybody here, nothing via email. So we'll go on to our extension staff report, and we will hear from Kristen.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone. Just a bit of a update on staffing. So Addison has resigned his position as food systems educator, and he was done about 2 weeks ago now. So that position has now been vacated, which he was given the report today. So that's why that's why there is no report tonight. With that vacancy, yesterday I met with Chris, and I met with, it's a 3-county position. So I met with Catherine and Randy, along with the Community Development Institute, the director, and the 3 other program areas under that Community Development Institute, to start to scope out what this position might look like moving forward. All 3 counties have been, I would say, pretty clear that food systems is not the highest priority in the Community Development Institute, and so we're not moving forward with that type of a position. The other 3 areas are organizational and leadership development, local government, and economic development. So we had a conversation yesterday with those 3 program managers so that the county leaders could have a better understanding of what those areas are and weigh in on the needs to see if there is a common theme throughout the 3 counties. So we're having those conversations now. I've turned those now over to our state team to, and we'll start to develop a position description that I'll share with the county leaders as we move forward with that position. So I'll keep you updated as to what has been decided and what's moving forward. If you have thoughts around that, I'd be happy to have you weigh in on that. But that's kind of where we're at this point. I'd like to move forward I like to take it a little slow, make sure we're scoping it correctly, because as you know, once you get a person in the position and the program area, it's a little difficult then to move away from that if it's not a priority. So really looking at what the priorities are for that institute in Dunn County, and then again with Eau Claire and Chippewa, since it is a shared position. Any questions on that?
No, just mostly a comment that I think changing that focus seems to make sense. Just that position now has had some fairly high turnover with not much to show for it, at least as far as what we've seen. So it'd be nice to have something that maybe can be more impactful for the community, and economic development is definitely a need. So.
Yeah, and the problem with the food systems position, and this is the conversations I've been having with the state on with the state program area and with Jason Hausler as my supervisor and an assistant dean, is that it's really focused, and it's more aligned with a state position so that it covers more of a state, because Addison was doing work with Hmong across other areas, not just here in Dunn County. So actually, he's moved into a state position that is focused on Hmong. So we're still going to, and it's a 2-year position. They're piloting it to see what the need is out here and in the state. So he's still working in the area. He'll be just more statewide. And so we'll still benefit from that program area, but you won't have to pay for it if in the sense of, because it is so focused. And I heard from all 3 county leaders that, yes, that's an area of need, but it's not our highest area of need. And something that we likely wouldn't want to continue. Chippewa made it very clear that they probably wouldn't continue with that funding moving forward. Just because of it could be put into other areas. The other 3 program areas that I alluded to, there was a robust conversation amongst the 3 county leaders yesterday after the presentations. And there's definitely, I think, a good fair amount of need around those other 3 programs that you'll see more impactful outcomes coming forward with that position. And we have to hire the right person with the right skill sets.
Just could you mention those 3 areas again and talk about what you think about them would be impactful?
Sure. And Chris, please weigh in too on your thoughts. So organizational leadership development. So that area works with developing leaders, not only within the county system. So some of the departments within the county could be leadership development within nonprofits, helping organizations be more robust and impactful. So maybe doing some strategic planning, some planning around things, helping them understand what their mission, how to get there, helping to build some of those organizations and having that understanding. Local government deals with the local government. So not only just the local government in terms of this county, but the county board, but also municipalities. Doing some local government trainings. So when there's turnovers in county board members, it might be helping to educate them on their roles, what their roles are, that sort of type of education. And then perhaps leadership development within the county or other municipalities, helping to build leaders or succession plans, those kinds of things, and taking your talent from within and building those skill sets out. And then economic development, he had 4 buckets that he talked about. And I don't know if I'll remember all 4 of them, but certainly downtown placemaking. I don't have my notes in front of me, so I apologize. Working with communities on economic development plans, working with entrepreneurship, thank you. And so working in that theme of economic development. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
And that seems awfully general to me.
It is general until you get the needs, yes, and the needs assessment comes in.
The last one, economic development, seems like we could, it could be defined in a more measurable and impactful way. The others, it just seems to me like, I'd be skeptical, but just one person. I mean, I appreciate Addison's work with Hmong farmers. Difficult job, and he did a really good job, I think. But there are a lot of other food-related kind of rural businesses that, like we were talking about the last night of the Valkyrie Brewing Company and the potential for a co-op to take that business on. There's nobody that can help with that sort of thing. So if we do economic development, I hope that there's an element of that sort of food farm related entrepreneurship that could be worked into it.
Yeah, because isn't there a part of extension that deals with cooperatives and cooperative formation, that type of thing. Somebody passed on when I was exploring forming a co-op, it passed on someone in extension that has that type of expertise. So that could be something that works into like, okay, an economic development formed with like entrepreneurial cooperative type of focus or something like that. That's is like Tom said, a little bit more focused on one area as opposed to like really broad.
Yeah, and with any of these program areas, you know, it is coming in and doing a needs assessment, talking to partners. You know, that's our first steps in any new position that comes in is with the lens of what that program area is. What's nice in community development is that with, you know, again, it's the hiring of the right person with the skill sets, is that they are very closely related to each other and they work well together. Catherine Schaff asked the question yesterday, well, if we pick one, does that mean we don't get the access to the other? And the answer is no. Food systems, it's the same thing. It's just because we're not hiring someone specific for food systems doesn't mean that you might not receive food system assistance if needed. We have state people that will, and we're hiring, as you saw with Addison's position as well, at the state level, we're hiring a lot more statewide people that can come in and help with those very specific things. So, but the co-op, for instance, if that's a need, that is, you know, so, and that's what I hope that this committee can help with, is that if there's needs out there, that's something that we can bring to the Institute and say, hey, do we have a person to help with this? You know, this is what our needs are. This is what a need that's bubbling up. Is there someone that can help? And so, you know, that's some of the through the committee, through conversations, you know, come talk to me, or,
Okay.
you know, if it's specific to ag, we might pull Jerry and Lissa into that conversation. And then together we would brainstorm, okay, if this, you know, if this is something that needs to be moving forward, who can we bring in? I think about Louisa with housing. She's pulled in Kristen Runge to help with some of that work. And so when those specific needs come up, we have state people that can assist our educators out here and align them with that. So.
I probably missed, but you probably mentioned your timeline on this hire, is it?
No, I don't like to rush hires. We got to get it right. Yep.
I think one of the things that was clear out of yesterday, though, is that as much as I understand the need for there to be the 3-county collective and, you know, financial contribution to the position, it also creates some complications because, so Chippewa County said, we're not interested in economic development. We have a robust economic development program, and that's not an area of interest for us at all. And then Eau Claire County was, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but kind of similarly like, well, but I don't know if the group that's already working on that would, you know, really welcome additional part of that, you know, so it's like, it is, I think that does make it complicated. One area that we did talk about, but I think this is where Kristen, where we'll have to have more conversations with Kristen and with Extension about is it doable? One of the things we all identified was that need for someone who becomes skilled at facilitation. So it's not particularly the one area, but it's how do you do true community development and bring people together around whatever the issue is and move them forward through that process. And, you know, I'm not sure how that fits with Extension's model, but it certainly was an area of need that we all identified.
And that would fall under organizational leadership development for sure. Yeah. But again, it's that skill set. So.
Well, it's something that I think for this committee, maybe not next month, but, you know, within a couple of months, it would be kind of an agenda item for us to maybe weigh in on, after maybe talking with you and talking with other cohorts, finding out what this committee's direction would be if, for our input, as much as that is worth.
Yeah, certainly. And I would say that 2 months down the line might be a little bit long. We hope to have that process started prior. So, I'm working now with county leaders and also just looking at the metrics out there. It's just some of the areas. What would we be potentially overlapping in the counties if we had economic development, for instance, right? So, so certainly would value the input from the committees across the 3 counties, and realizing, as Chris mentioned, it's tricky now with having 3 counties. And this is something that, we have, it's great because we've never really had community development in all of the counties. In fact, when I was here in Dunn County, we did not have a community development presence. Now you do, but you're sharing it. So it just causes that extra layer of complexity. I would invite, as I mentioned to Chris, I would invite anybody to be on the final interview team to help select the candidate. Of course, we can't have a quorum, so I usually, 1 or 2 from the committee. When it's a area-wide committee or position like this, 1 or 2 from the counties. We don't usually like to overwhelm, but certainly we like to welcome that perspective so that you have a voice in
But
hiring
you
the person.
can't really look at hiring yet until you decide
The
what.
scope of the position,
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we're working on currently.
And I don't know, Kristen, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I could ask this question offline as well, but I think one of the difficulties as I reflect on our conversation yesterday is that I don't know that it's an area of need. To
Right.
say this is, because that need changes. And I would just go back to broadband. A year ago, well, broadband has been on the radar for a really long time, and there's been movement and direction. It was when there was going to be BEAD planning money that the pendulum really swung, and that became a higher priority, which is why I look to those sorts of things that are not, unless it's a really strong identified shared need that can just be met in one area, but that's where it gets complicated with 3 counties. I look at sort of a broader skill set of someone that can be a resource to the counties to move forward, whatever initiatives happen to rise to the top of the food chain.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it, Chris. And, it's more on currently what are the priorities as we're looking at an open position. And that's why we scope these positions every time they open, because the priorities change. So at the time of the food systems educator, which I was not here for that, but when that position came open, there was a collective decision somehow that food systems was still a priority to move forward. And so that's why that position was hired. So it is certainly something that we constantly look at, and our educators who are in the field should be also constantly looking at priorities and shifting their programs. That's why we have 1-year plan of work. Their plan for the year is to do this, and it might shift. And so what does that look like? So certainly that's an important piece.
Tom.
Yeah, thanks. So just in your report, there's under the value-added programming section, you talk about an all-day educational event for new farmers dealing with grazing, basically. And you got like a really great lineup of people but it's not, what's the context? Has that happened, or is that being planned to happen?
That's happened. Yeah, that one happened. Yeah.
How did it go?
It sounds like it was good.
How many people came?
That's a really good question that I don't have an answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So the value added programming that you see on there, that's not necessarily our educators that might even be involved.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
can
an
see this.
added, yeah, it's an added value that because you have extension, the constituents are, we have those programs that come into the county. So we'll keep you posted. Hopefully I'll have additional news next month on that position. But if you do have, thoughts or would like to have a conversation further, just let me know. We can certainly meet offline. A couple other things. I just wanted to, last month's, I wanted to bring up and I was hoping that Larry was going to be here tonight, but I think he's at the fair meeting, the state fair
Yes.
meeting.
Yep.
The dairy breakfast conversation. So I brought it up last month because I wanted to preempt any questions that might come up. Larry took that in a little bit of a different direction. I did talk to him afterwards. So, Melissa and I did have the dairy breakfast conversation. I also talked to Chris about some of the things that we're doing that potentially, it's just one of those historical things we've done that we probably shouldn't be doing. One of them is opening their mail and taking money for them to deposit. We have to stop doing that. So there's just some things like that are liability, not only to us, but to the county. But there's also, because they're a partner, and we met with them, we met with their treasurer, their president, and the secretary, I believe. And they understood. We're going to work through a succession plan of having them take on those roles. We'll continue to be their PO box. That seems to be the one high need they have. So for now, we can take their mail. We're just not going to open it or do anything with it. But we'll take their mail. Melissa can send out and say, your mail's here. We'll continue that for the foreseeable future. And some of the other items we're willing, as we expressed to them, is it might take a year or two. Certainly for this dairy breakfast, there's not much that's going to change because it's coming up pretty quickly. So Melissa's going to be supporting them pretty heavily this year, and then we'll start to move away from that. They're understanding, they were appreciative of us continuing for the time being, and then also for helping them determine and build. One of the problems they're having is just having people volunteer. And so we're going to bring in Lissa and Jerry to have a conversation with them as well about, how do we get people to come in and volunteer and build the dairy breakfast. Perhaps this could be a couple county type of deal where it's a 2 or 3 county deal. And so, we're really getting engaged on the level that I think is more appropriate for us, rather than doing some of the support stuff. We're helping them continue to thrive and to put on a really important event in our communities. So I think we're moving more into that realm than more of that administrative realm. So they are very open to that. We're going to continue conversations. But I just wanted to give you an update on that, as it was hard to be clear last month. And if you had any questions or concerns, I'd like to talk about those as well. So, and finally, see, it's a good thing we didn't have an educator report. I have a lot to say this month. Just so you're aware, our educators are going through, and myself, all of Extension is going through performance reviews currently. We have end of the year performance reviews that will change to based on software and different things that are being implemented. Our reviews will move in the future to July 1st to June 30th. Right now they are a year. So we're going through those evaluations. If you have any concerns about any of the performance of the educators, please let me know. That's not something we'll discuss in committee, but that is certainly something I'd like to hear from any of you, not only concerns, but things that you have noticed that you are really, that you really appreciate about having the educators in the programming that they're doing. So I would value that feedback. And I just want to let you know that that is a process that we go through every year, and we also have mid-year reviews, but and educators set goals for themselves. Well, all staff set goals for themselves for the year, and it's usually, related on professional development and professional growth. And then they have their yearly plan of work that they work on throughout the year that they also have goals directly related to programming. So just wanted to bring that to your attention that that's happening now. And if you have any feedback, I'd be really happy and would love to have that conversation. Or you could just email me too. So that's all I have.
Anybody else have any questions for Kristen? If not, thank you. Sorry Larry's not here to go on to a 20-minute discussion about the dairy breakfast, but we'll bring it up next month just for that. All right, we're going to move on to economic development update. I will look over to this side of the room for the two people most involved in economic development. Take
All
it
right.
away.
Okay, so as I've reported to you kind of over the last few months, we are really close to a final agreement with UW Stout, the GMDC, and the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation to a shared position called Director of Dunn County Economic Development. That position would be housed at UW Stout, although because they'll be able to lend some administrative support to that. But that the goal would be that obviously that person's out and about a good majority of the time. So next week, Tuesday of next week, the GMDC will vote on that matter. And then the following week, on the 23rd, I believe, of January, the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation will vote on that agreement. And on the 24th, the Stout Tech Park will. And then we can move, if all of that's a go, we can move forward with hiring. So I think it's really exciting. Yeah, it looks good. The agreement looks good. I think it has a great setup for success.
Are there some monies behind that to locate this director and offer something that might be competitive for that person to like fulfill a role, kind of like Chippewa does?
Yep. So thank you for bringing that up because that was one of the questions. So the DCEDC will simply pass through Dunn County government's contribution to that position. So the $55,000 that we pass to the DCEDC will pass through to that position. And then the city of Menominee likewise funded, sent money partly to the DCEDC and partly to the GMDC and partly to Cedar Corps. And so they are going to consolidate that money, and that will pass through. That'll actually pass through directly from the city to this partnership. And then UW Stout is funding the benefit package. So and the kind of administrative support. So the goal is the current budget is that it would be an $80,000 a year position, and with the full benefit package, which is apparently in the economic development world kind of not very usual, because usually there are not benefits to those positions. And so what it attracts kind of two different kind of people as a general rule, either people who are retired and can come back and have some other form of an insurance benefit, or people who are, have a spouse who's able to carry an insurance package. So I think have already been some names bantered around of some people that are in the economic development kind of related world who may be interested in that position because of the solid construct around the pay and the benefits.
Chris, is that a UW Stout position then?
Mm-hmm. It is. So it's Wisconsin retirement. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, super exciting.
Yeah.
So now, what Dan and I were talking the other day, once it hits the hiring process, everything goes into slow. Motion. Government systems and academia don't move quickly in terms of hiring, but we have a commitment from the chancellor that she's gonna push it along, and she's super invested in this working out, so.
Good, excellent.
So that's kind of where that's at this moment. In the meantime, we've divvied up amongst a few leaders of the DCEDC, some of the, like, I pay the bills, I write all the checks, somebody signs them. You know, there really aren't many, but we have a few odds and ends of things that are paid for. But on a similar note, the DCEDC is sitting on about $23,000 maybe, which is a nice package of money that they have for sort of not operating expenses so much, but like promotion or projects or things that they might like to be able to have this new position do. There's some seed money for some of that. Xcel Energy is kicking in $25,000 of seed money to the project. It will, so the position, I've said this, I think before, but the position will be housed with Stout and a Stout employee, but it will receive its direction from an oversight committee, which is comprised of the president of the, or the chair of the GMDC, the chair of the DCEDC, the chair of the Stout Tech Park, and then a representative of the city and a representative of the county. And then kind of that will, so they'll report back to the existing corporations, and they will kind of do the work, split up the work between them, but they'll receive their direction from a kind of cohesive group instead of having three full boards of bosses.
Sounds good.
Just a quick question, Chris. So, what's the composition now of the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation? How is that board's membership determined?
It has a bylaws, and those bylaws have a prescribed membership. We identified there's a pretty active board. So Ann sits on that board, Gary Steen sits on that board, I sit on that board. And then there's a representative of the city, there's a representative of Stout Tech Park. There's a representative from the chamber. Where is Tim Benjamin? Elkmont, I think. Village of Elkmont. And then yes, there's Laura Benrud from the Wisconsin Credit Union. There's Steve Girth from Schmidt Prototypes. So there's a kind of there are a few holes. There are a few unfilled spots in that, but until we sort of knew where this was all going to go, we hadn't moved forward with recruiting and figuring that out. But there's the people that are involved are active and come to the meetings and participate and add value. So it's good.
Since you're writing the bills, a small thing that I thought of, that since there's really nobody kind of running things anymore at the DCEDC, is that somebody needs to make sure that their website's being taken care of.
Yes, so it hadn't been, and it hadn't been paid for.
That's my bigger concern, yeah.
So I paid for it. We paid for it. And then now we're going to set up a meeting with Golden Shovel to who kind of does the administration to that, to update the content and bring it kind of into the current decade.
That would be good.
Get rid of the blurry picture.
Anybody else have any questions, comments about economic development? If not, we'll stay with Chris as we move into communications. I actually got to sit in on this last meeting, so.
Yes, you did.
Because
you did.
for once it like didn't move around. Well, maybe it moved, and I just followed this time its updated time
Date.
and date and was able to sit in, so.
So there's not a lot to say about that. I think Doug has continued to be a great resource to us. So we met last week, I believe, and then I think the day after the meeting, we learned that, or I learned that the walking path that will be built, the bike and walking path that would be built between here and the Judicial Center, and then complete the path to connect to down on Stokey Parkway. That path has been staked now by the Highway Department, which will result in some trees coming out, which for some people is a controversial issue. So we looped Doug in, and I was late for the meeting, but Dan and Andrew and Doug and Dustin met with this morning and talked through some ways to try to get ahead of the potential pushback about the trees. Andrew had some great ideas, like approaching the people at Stout that had built benches from trees that were removed from the city in honor of Nancy Schofield. There was some seed money apparently from Nancy to use some of the trees that were ash trees that were removed to make benches. He's also chatting with the jail garden and extension about the potential to do edible urban landscaping.
Edible. Hmm.
Exactly. Sort of as that trade-off to, yes, we're gonna lose some pine trees and some scrappy brush.
Is
But
the path going through, like, just directly through that woods? Is that why?
it comes, so if you think about between here and the Judicial Center on 29, there's a relatively significant ditch. And then on the left-hand side of that ditch is all of the fiber optic and all of that sort of stuff. So you can't just create that path right there because we'd have to reroute all of that stuff, which would make it astronomically expensive, probably not even doable.
Yeah.
So it has to go up into the tree line, and it takes out about, would you say 20 feet?
Why not spend a couple $100,000 and build a bridge across that ravine?
Right.
Well, we could.
The tree line is the line of the right of way, the state's right of way to the
Ah.
highway. So you could, but there's more work that needs to go into that. And then there's also some safety concerns as you talk about being too close to a highway, and it's,
Oh,
I think
sure.
it's 55 miles an hour right at that location. So
Mhm.
think of things flying off. So being a little bit away is.
So the
Valuable.
path would connect to the Prevea. So the path comes from Prevea along the frontage road. It would come across our front yard in front of our building, and then through that edge of that tree line, and then drop in and along the front of the parking lot for the Judicial Center, then around the corner and connect to the trail on the other side of the Judicial Center at Stokey, on Stokey Parkway.
Nice.
So back to Doug, just being available, quick, resourceful, has good ideas, has been involved in a number of tree controversies before. So is willing to, is able to just grab that and go. And combined with great like brain trust and ideas from Dan and Andrew and Dustin, off he goes.
Nice. Did you guys do a bead planning press release or not? Or did that take precedence?
We did not do one, but we may have something that comes out of our meet. Are we moving out of the next agenda item?
No. No, this was still communications, because when I was in the meeting, we were talking about that, so.
Right. Well, we'll work on that, but I think a lot of that'll come out of the next
Okay.
learnings over the next week or two.
Anybody have any questions, comments on communications? I've driven the new road, which was a mistake because it's like fresh gravel. I mean, my car was like packed with brown dirt that would not come off. I thought, this is really nice. I can go there, look at all that clouded, oh, look at the back of my car. It looked terrible.
Which road?
The new one that, remember the discussion about making an actual road and how expensive that was gonna be, and there was a path,
Right.
and they now have gravelled that, so you can take this really slick path from Stokey Parkway and not get on 29 and come here, but your car will be covered with a thick coating of brown, awful dirt that doesn't come off. So,
Sure, the snow today took care of that.
no, no, that made it wet, so now it'll be even worse, so.
I do have one other quick little side thing about communication, which doesn't have to do so much with our contract with Doug Mel, but so I had a lengthy conversation, maybe 3 weeks back with Kathy Weber, who does the Menominee Minute website, and she had a bunch of questions and has been in a deep sleuth about taxes and levy and net new construction and all of those things. And so we had a great conversation, and then we also have had an extensive email conversation this week about just her inquiring with some questions about the neighbors and kind of what that means and what that costs and all of those sorts of things. So another source of someone who's trying to get it right and trying to understand and trying to get some information out to whoever is paying attention to such, with some just good, solid information.
Good, excellent. We'll move on to our broadband discussion. The Broadband Task Force first inaugural meeting is actually scheduled for this Thursday afternoon. If anybody would like to attend, it will be both in person and online, because we have task force members from all over the place. And I'll turn over things to Dan if you want to share some info.
Yeah. Yeah. So as Jim said, the task force is going to meet on Thursday. What's going on really in the broadband world right now? Next week, preliminarily, they have scheduled next week to be the release of the BEAD eligibility maps from the Public Service Commission. So those maps are going to come out, and then a week later is going to start the 30-day challenge period, at which point nonprofits, internet service providers, governments can challenge the information on those maps. So challenging would be to say, you say that this is not covered, but it should be. You say this place has good internet, but we say it doesn't. One of the big things that has been called out is, I'm just gonna call it it's a multiple person dwelling unit, so whatever, it's an apartment complex. Is one of those areas that the Public Service Commission or the Wisconsin Broadband Office, as they put their eligibility together, is something that they're asking people to look closely at, because just because high-speed internet is being provided to the door of that building doesn't mean that every resident in that building can receive that. So they're looking for us to kind of identify those particular areas which are going to be considered served right now, but we could look to challenge those particular areas. So that is going to be quick work to identify what they have provided and to do a lot of the research and to submit those challenges. And we're still waiting for the challenge process to be approved by the federal government. So assuming everything goes as it's been planned, that's kind of that tight schedule, and that's really why we wanted to get that broadband task force together so we can start talking about how we want to go about that.
And we still have one open seat on it that we're still trying to fill from someone from the healthcare field. So if anybody has any suggestions about anybody who has that's somewhat tangentially involved in healthcare and has an interest in broadband, we'd love to have them join the task force.
That's really all I have, although update for Jim, I think he knew it, but we are going to have a representative from the Public Service Commission who will be attending and presenting on the status of BEAD at that meeting on Thursday. So
Yeah,
that was
very
nice.
Yeah, it'll be very
They reached
informative.
out.
Yeah.
So,
The one medical potential, I have no clue if it's even a possibility, but would be maybe to talk to Jen about a contact from Reform. Just because they cover Chippewa and Hudson and here and, have lots of different things going on.
Yeah.
Might be a
talk to him.
possibility.
It's a good idea. Anybody have questions about broadband? Again, everybody's welcome to attend. If you don't have enough meetings you attend, feel free to join us on Thursday at 1 o'clock. Move on to tourism. The only update I have is that we seem to getting more traffic on the website, getting more submissions from some local businesses. And saw a few more come in this week too. So glad that it's getting some more traffic. Could use more, but as it gets more stuff, as we build it, they will continue to show up and come. So just like they say about the baseball field. Anybody have any questions about tourism or comments or any of that stuff? If not, move on to the next item, consideration of actions. There are none. And our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, February 13th, not on Valentine's Day this year, like last year. Any announcements that anybody has? If not, this meeting is adjourned.